Hello everyone, this is Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore, and welcome to the MuseScore Café. This is my regular series we do every week where we take a look at some aspect of creating music using MuseScore. And today is our first Wednesday of the month, so we will be having an Ask Me Anything session, as we always do first Wednesday of the month. So by all means, if you've got questions, this is the place to ask. Notice the message I put at the top of the chat. It is kind of convenient if when you have a question, you can click on the little emoji icon here. And if you type into the search, type quest, you'll see the question mark emoji. And then you can have yourself a question mark emoji. Oops, let me close that window. A question mark emoji there. So it just makes your questions stand out a little more. And if I miss a question along the way, feel free to be reminding me. I will try my best to be, monitoring everything going on in the chat. So that's what we're doing today. I do have a, couple little things that I want to talk about, tell you about also. So while I wait for some questions to come in, if I assume most people here saw my newsletter that went out yesterday, and where I reposted the announcement about the Muse Group, the company that basically runs MuseScore, buying Hal Leonard. This is it's difficult to state how huge that potentially is. I mean, Hal Leonard is the biggest music publisher in the entire world, and so for Muse Group to now own Hal Leonard is like, I don't even know what that's going to mean, but I guess we will find out as things move along. If nothing else, it means that there's like Beatles songs and other music that Hal Leonard owns the copyright to that will now be cleared to post on MuseScore.com, because there were certain holdouts that MuseScore.com did not have license agreements with, and all the ones now that Hal Leonard owns presumably are fair game. So, that's one practical thing it might mean. There may be many other things that come from this. Here's another random thing, I guess random, also that happened this week. Last week's cafe, I previewed MuseScore 4.2, and one of the things that I showed you all were some new guitar features having to do with bends and so forth. And when MuseScore 4 first came out, there was, Muse sounds was a big part of what MuseScore 4 was about, these new orchestral sounds. And a lot of people were like, yeah, but what about guitars? What about marching percussion? And those were things that were announced as, well, those will come later. Well, they haven't officially announced anything. They haven't officially released anything. But the combination of the fact that MuseScore 4.2 has these new guitar features and this video that I'm about to show you, you just want to see this if you haven't already. So this Martin Tentacruel, being his Twitter handle or X handle, I guess, posted this video recently without saying what it is, but it's obvious what it is. This is a preview of the new Muse Sounds guitar, electric guitar sounds anyhow. I assume there's more than just this, but check this out if you haven't already. This is presumably MuseScore playback we are listening to for 4.2 that will be released in the next couple weeks. Check this out. Anyhow, that's just a little preview, right, of what I assume we're all going to be able to be playing with in a couple weeks. And I assume it won't just be those electric guitar sounds. There'll probably be classical nylon string sounds and other things too. But I guess we'll find out soon enough. But yeah, that was pretty impressive, I thought. All right, so Larry, I do see your question. And okay, so by the way, Yeah, so Larry has a question, and I do want to point out, because I see that Shiana has replied to it in a thread. That's a new feature of this chat, that now we can reply within threads, which is kind of nice because it streamlines the discussion a little bit, so that when I see the main questions here, if someone wants to reply to one, you can use that reply in thread button. So that's a new thing for the chat here that just showed up in the last week or two. All right, but let me try to give my like a demonstration of this. There is no great answer there, but I think the solution that that Chiana is suggesting is a good way to go. So if you have, say, a repeat, let's go ahead and add a repeat here. And to be honest, I do this so seldom that I'm going to be kind of, trying to remember the process as I go along. So I got my repeat, got my first ending, got my second ending, and I got a whole note here, and I will tie it to a quarter note. And then in the second ending, I also want a note, and I want to show that tie kind of coming in here. So there's no direct support for this, right? There's no direct support for ties going into that second ending. So there's a number of articles. If you search, do a web search, MuseScore, how to tie second ending or something like that, you'll find an article with a whole bunch of suggestions, but I do like the grace note one. So I'm going to press /, which is the shortcut for grace note, and then I can add a tie from that, and then I can select that grace note and press V to make it invisible, and now I got that, right? So you can play around with this, play around with the position of things, maybe stretch that tie longer if you want, all sorts of things you can do to like tweak that. But that's one reasonably straightforward way of doing it. I'm going to answer Bruce's question next. It's not really a MuseScore question. I assume you're talking just generally about like harmony. Is it unusual for there to be several Mars where there's no obvious cadence of any kind, meaning no approach to a tonic chord? Well, no, it's not unusual. The more complex the music, the less often it comes back to the tonic. And Dave, this gets to something you were asking about as well. Is it kind of boring to keep coming back to the tonic? And yeah, frankly, it is boring to keep coming back to the tonic. And that's why one of the many reasons why I'm so gung-ho on the idea of substituting, finding alternative routes, and perhaps not always coming back to the tonic, but using 3 instead of 1, 6 instead of 1, and things like that. But it's also common for pieces in certain types of music to kind of continually modulate, so they don't keep reinforcing the original tonic. That's a big thing in the Baroque, becomes a big thing in the Romantic era as well. So that's my answer. All right, I'm now going to I'll come to Kevin Johnson. I see your question about importing XML files. Is it typical that the sounds wouldn't be recognized? No, it's not typical, but it's probably fairly common if they all come from the same source. In other words, if you have a program that generates XML files and that program doesn't put the information in that XML file that MuseScore would need to recognize the instrument, there's a whole XML ID that's supposed to be there in the XML file, but not all programs honor that. So if the program you're using to export doesn't put in these music XML IDs, then MuseScore is going to have to default to piano, and then every file you export from that program is probably going to have that same issue. So if you're using a program that does put in correct music XML IDs, in theory, MuseScore will honor them and recognize the instruments. But, there might be exceptions. There might be instruments like that kind of fall through the cracks. Like for some reason, I want to say euphonium, because it doesn't have a standard general MIDI sound, nor is there a standard Muse sound. I have a feeling if you import something with euphonium, even if it's specified correctly in the Music XML, I would be not at all surprised to get some sort of bogus playback. And the same could be true for some other things, like maybe contrabass clarinet or alto flute or some other instruments where the Music XML ID is correct, but there's not a well-defined sound in the general MIDI standard for it. So there's certain instruments that I won't be surprised. So either one program is never going to do it, and you're always going to have problems exporting from that program, or certain instruments will have issues. So that's my general answer. But yeah, other than that, you should normally expect instruments to come in and have the correct sounds assigned by default. That's a reasonable assumption, and it should normally happen. All right. So what else? I don't think there were any other questions here, but I know. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, Dave, I missed your question earlier. No, it's not earlier. It's right here. Is the latest beta firming up to a stable release? So, yeah, I mean, I've only been using it a little bit. And okay, so here's the thing. A beta release is like a snapshot. Dave, you're probably also familiar with nightly builds, or maybe not, but nightly builds are built every night. So every time there's a bug fix, the next day, nightly build will include that bug fix. So the beta is already at this point, I don't know, a week and a half old or something, and maybe almost 2 weeks old. And so it's already quite a few bug fixes behind. Just a few hours ago, they started pushing a button for a second beta. So there'll be a beta 2. I don't know if it's available yet. I haven't checked the announcements for them or what, but the groundwork is in place for a beta 2. But I know for a fact there's still bugs that are in the beta that will be annoying. Annoying isn't the same as not useful at all. So let me tell you the one bug that I know that would get in a lot of people's way if you want to use the beta. If you try to use the 4.2 beta, if you add a spacer from the layout palette, it just doesn't show up. It gets added to your score, but then it disappears. So that is a known bug, and it's obviously a pretty bad bug if you're using spacers a lot. So for at least some purposes, the beta won't really be functional for that, but you can still do virtually everything else with it. I have committed myself, the project that I'm doing for the Harmony course, I'm doing my version of a project while everyone else does their version. I'm using the 4.2 nightly build for that to give it some extra testing. And I haven't run into any particular problems doing that, creating a piano score with chord symbols and multiple staves and so forth. So I would definitely not try to use it for actual real work yet, unless you want to live on the edge like I am for this project. But absolutely, it's more than usable for testing purposes, which is the whole reason to have a beta. All right, let me continue scrolling here and see. I don't think I've missed other questions. I am going to check. Nice. Oh, yeah, Stephen talking about that A major cadence and taking a while to find it. Yes, and I remember you had mentioned that to me earlier as well. And yeah, that is absolutely true. And yeah, so that is definitely the case. Let's see. Well, in a few more weeks, 4.2 will be out. 4.2 is supposed to be out by the end of the year, and the progress that I'm seeing is indicative of that. So again, if you want, the whole purpose of a beta is to help test. In other words, we need people to use it despite the fact that maybe it's not perfect yet, because that way any bugs that get found can be fixed before. So the whole point of a beta isn't to wait until it's stable to use. It's to use now and report problems so they can be fixed before the release. Because I mean, obviously there's bugs in MuseScore in the current release, there's bugs in the previous release, and there's bugs in every single release of every single piece of software, but they're pretty well committed to fixing any new bugs that get discovered. In other words, something that works in 4.1, 4.1.1 that's broken in the beta almost certainly will be fixed before release if it's reported. So that's kind of the point. So absolutely anyone with any interest in helping make MuseScore a better thing, please go ahead and download the beta or a nightly build. And, my video that I put in the newsletter last week has the whole spiel on how to get a hold of it. So let's see. Other questions. I see now there's a retry about Music XML and opening it in a text editor. And yes, that is absolutely true that a Music XML file is just a text file, unless you save it with the .xml format. So like when I go to export, in fact, let me go flip over here. This is my MuseScore Café theme. I'm going to say export, and I'm going to choose Music XML as my format. And you'll notice there's several different file types here. The one that says compressed, this is a zip file. Yes, the file extension is MXL, but it's really a zip file. If I choose this file type, it's going to actually create a zip file. So I'll have to first open that in a zip editor. And then within the zip file, I'll find the actual Music XML file. So if your intent is to play around with looking at the thing, I recommend choosing this option here that says uncompressed.musicxml. So I'm going to go ahead and pick that option, export my score, and it'll be called MuseScore Café.musicxml. And let's go ahead and take a look at the file. Here it is. I'm going to open this in a text editor. And this is what it looks like. And you can see that for each of the parts, like this one says the part name is alto sax, the abbreviation is alto, the instrument ID is P2-I1, instrument sound is wind.reed.saxophone.alto. That thing there, that instrument sound tag, this right here is the thing that MuseScore is now supposed to use to figure out, oh, this is what sound to use during playback. So let's go ahead and actually open this score in MuseScore and see what we get. See if we get anything. So what here's what we'll find. You're going to hopefully find, well, that's the original one. Here's the one I'm loading. Okay, so clearly formatting wise looks different. It didn't pick up the jazz font or anything like that. But I'm actually surprised the falls came through here. I had made one of those falls invisible because I was working around a playback bug in MuseScore 3 that has been fixed and then broken again and then fixed again and so forth. So there's a lot of stuff in here. The text came through. It looks like, yeah, the drum part looks about right. So it looks like most things came through okay. Let's listen to it. So the instruments did come through. Certain things were not coming through correctly. Let me also get my chat back here so that I can be following if you all are trying to talk to me while I'm doing this. But like, okay, so one of the things that I can see or I can hear is going on is it is defaulted to using Muse sounds, which is normally great, but not so great for my purpose because if I solo the trumpet, Muse Sounds trumpet cannot play the high E flat. It just can't. It doesn't have that note sampled, and the developer of it is like, no, I'm going to value realism. I refuse to just pitch shift a D to make it sound like E flat. People are begging him to change that, and maybe someday that'll happen. But for now, Muse Sounds can't play high trumpet parts. So in my original version of this, I had changed it from the MuseScore, from the Muse Sounds trumpet to the MS Basic. Now, for some reason, the trombone came in with MS Basic and not with Muse Sounds. I don't know why, but it is at least playing a trombone. I'm not sure why it didn't use the Muse Sounds trombone. Yeah, so all the instruments are picking up their right sounds, at least in this case. But yeah, Music XML it's gotten me all the notes, and I'm surprised it's really getting me it's getting me those bends, it's getting me the alternate note heads for the percussion. I mean, let's look at this drum part here. This is like a ride bell with a diamond note head, and that is exactly the way it looks in the original. Here's my original again, and yeah, the ride bell is on the top line with that diamond note head. So it's doing a lot of things right. It's got my articulation marks. I have no idea what that 7 is about. What the heck is that 7? Oh, chord symbols. Here's a known bug with chord symbols that you should all know about. If the file you're importing has chord symbols, they won't show up at first when you import it. And it's just a bug that's like, it's annoying and it's the way it is, but it's a simple fix. First of all, if I save it and close it and reopen it, it's fixed. The other workaround here is I'm going to go to format style chord symbols, and I'm just going to switch the style to jazz, and I can switch it right back to standard. And when I do that, chord symbols are back. There's just a glitch in that the style information for chord symbols isn't initialized properly when importing from Music XML. Known issue that I haven't checked to see if that's fixed in 4.2 or not, but it's definitely a known issue that is on the radar. So, come on, let's get some more questions here. I'm getting to go into great depth on the answers I do give, which is fun. But I'm totally happy to be answering more questions. One thing that I see, this fall here, notice like the bug that I was working around. This bug was in MuseScore 3 and remains in MuseScore 4, but I think it's fixed in 4.2. Is that if you have a tied note, falls don't work at the end of the tie, only at the beginning of the tie, which is stupid. So I actually put ties in both places and hid one, but I haven't played enough to see in MuseScore 4.2. MuseScore 4.2 has that whole new bend system, whole new playback of falls and everything. So that's something I'm going to play with, is optimizing my MuseScore Café to take advantage of the new MuseScore 4 stuff. And the palm muted guitar here, it's not playing that palm mute sound. That's supposed to be tick 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 tick. It's supposed to be palm mute, and that symbol didn't get imported. It didn't get exported correctly or imported correctly. Can't say which, but I can see it's just staff text saying mute. I would need to delete that and add the actual text. So I'm going to add my guitar palette, and then open the guitar palette and select this note and pick mute. It must be under more. Y'all see mute under here? Palm mute. Oh, palm mute. That's the thing. It's the palm mute line. There might be another way of doing it, but this will probably, this I would have to then extend to say, oh, I want it to be that many notes. And now, right, that's what it should have been. So that didn't come through in the Music XML. And Dave, yes, you're right that any code editor is going to likely be a good choice for working with Music XML, because Music XML is based on an XML format, which HTML is also. So anytime you see these things with angle brackets, like part list surrounded by angle brackets, and then like here's score part, and then here's slash scores part. These are all things that there's a ton of formats that are based on XML that have the same basic look to them. HTML is another one. And so there's a ton of code editors out there that have kind of direct support for like highlighting, like when you click this thing here, there'll be a command in your code editor that'll show you where the corresponding closing tag is, and so forth. In fact, this editor here is called Carrot, and I don't know, somewhere in here I imagine is maybe because I know people use Carrot for code. I don't know if it has any XML features, but anyhow, that's code editors are definitely good for XML. Anyhow. And Allison, sorry to hear you're having trouble getting connected. So yeah, I don't know if that was a problem with your internet or a problem getting onto this site, but it does appear other people got in here okay. So hopefully things are all right. So, Kevin, is next Thursday the very last Harmony course session? So yes, that'll be the last live session. So officially, when I first put out the Harmony course and all the promo materials for it, I said the course runs through the 15th, which is the Friday, next Friday. But really, the last thing that happens is Thursday's music masterclass. We'll see if I, do something for that Friday also, but that's basically the end of that course. And then I will most likely take the last 2 weeks off as I did for Thanksgiving. I will probably take the last 2 weeks off from doing live sessions and then resume all the regular live sessions again in January. So you can probably expect to see that happen. All right. Another thing I guess I should tell you, since the subject of these threaded replies came up, there's the Circle, which is the platform that this site is based on, that we're on right now. This community is on a site called Circle. Circle is constantly making improvements, and they just released a whole bunch of improvements that threads within live stream chats is one of the recent improvements. They also just made some accessibility improvements that along the way broke a couple things, and so we're still sorting out. Because I have all these workarounds that I put in place to increase the accessibility of the site. So I need to figure out which of my customizations are not compatible with the changes they made, which are no longer necessary because they've made improvements. And it's going to be a process of sorting all that out. It's going to be a process of sorting all that out over the next few days. So definitely, if any of you here who are using the website through a screen reader and you're encountering any issues, definitely let me know. But there's a number of other minor little things like the threads within the chat that are new. And so you might be noticing some additional stuff going on, some additional capabilities that have been enabled and others that are coming. Some of them I have to then enable to let you do them. But so anyhow, just be aware that the site is under constant, constantly being improved. And there was just a big round of it earlier this week. So, all right, I'm still, you would love to see some more questions coming in. But as always, I can find things to talk about when there's no specific questions coming in. I am going to fire up the beta. Actually, I'll fire up the nightly build of 4.2. Just so you can see, if there's things that we didn't see last week, or if someone has a question about 4.2. But one of the things that I have been curious about is that the issue of falls, because I did notice the playback of that fall was different last week. So this is, I'm going to turn on the display of invisible elements. So you can see that I've put a fall on the note before the tie because that's a long-standing bug. So that fall is sounds different than it used to. It has a little more I don't think it's an improvement. Let's put it that way. You can hear kind of individual pitches as it comes down. So yeah, that's something. But I want to see what happens if I delete that fall, if it still plays now. No, so it's still the case that I need to put the fall before the tie, as has been the case for quite a long time. Anyhow, these are all things that where I'm discovering as I go along here. Let me shrink down this window so I can see the chat. How does the reply in thread button, how does the reply in thread work? So I'm going to show you, Joanne, by replying to yours. I'm going to hover over your message and, hover over your message and then click here where it says reply in a thread. And then it pops up that little thing. Clicked the reply in thread button. So there you go. So that was a good, Robin. This is a really good observation. That when the nightly build popped up, it claimed to be 4.3 dev. That's actually, the splash screen. That's actually a lie, though, and that's so that's something that's like a little bug in the splash screen that they, I think, just fixed today, and so maybe it'll be in tomorrow's build, but I'm not sure. But there are separate nightlies for 4.2 as well as for what's called the master, which is what will eventually become 4.3. And unless I've set this up wrong, I do have the nightly for 4.2. So the splash screen is lying, but it's definitely ahead of the beta. It is the 4.2 nightly build, if I have done this correct. So I think this is a lie here where it says pre-release for 4.3. I'm pretty sure I actually have the 4.2 nightly build, because there is a 4.2 and a master, and I tried to put the right one in. Will it be possible to add vibrato to some notes and not have vibrato on others? So and writing for strings. So I'm going to say that the answer is most likely no. In other words, I don't know the answer, but depends on how you're adding vibrato, and we're going to find out here. So I'm going to choose some stringed instruments here. I'm going to go ahead and say violin. I'll add a viola too, just for the hell of it. And let's add some notes. And there we go. Now, I am not sure. I'm going to show you how to make these all half notes. I'm going to cut all that. And now I'm going to say paste double duration, because half notes will be easier to hear vibrato on, right? If I want to add vibrato on that E, to be honest, I am not sure what the approved way of doing that would even be. And maybe one of you knows. Vibrato right here. Okay, let's see. All right, I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear anything special. I think that vibrato might only affect guitar, but I'm not really sure. Yeah, that's something I haven't played with, to be honest. And so I will definitely take your feedback on how it's, if you've been able to get vibrato to work at all, because that didn't do anything. Right, that didn't sound any different to me. Let's make these all E's. Yeah, those all sound the same. So I guess that's a question. Is there a non-vibrato? And that's a good question. Did you see non-vibrato on here? I see normal. I'm just going to put normal on this thing and see if that does anything. But I think that again is for guitar. Yeah, so these all have a small amount of vibrato, as you would expect. Sense of vibrato is not on the palette. So yeah, if there's another marking that you know of that would affect the string sound, that would be good to know, but I don't know of any. one thing to know is that when Muse Sounds was released, there was this list of like all the different sounds that are available, and it says there's vibrato and non-vibrato samples. At least I think it does. But there's no way to trigger the difference. And so what it means is that Muse Sounds has capabilities that MuseScore doesn't yet have a way of triggering. And I think the same is true with brass mutes. The brass in Muse Sounds have muted sounds available, but MuseScore doesn't have a way of triggering them yet. Setting up a whole system for triggering of different sounds is being planned for 4.3 or whatever. That this is going to be continuing to expand over time. And harmonics, yes, harmonics definitely do work, and a lot of these cymbals, actually tremolo. Okay, that's interesting. So tremolo did do a tremolo on that E, and then vibrato canceled it. So that's something. Anyhow, and of course, there's also the // tremolo marking, but this marking is there more again for the sake of guitar, I think. Or if you have an extended tremolo passage and you don't want to use the slashes on the stems all the time, you can use that tremolo text there. So I will still take questions in here while I talk about random other things that I'm always here to talk about. I'm going to show you some random thing that I did. Is this 4.2? Yes, this is 4.2. So I'm going to show you a really silly. Is it silly or is it just? It is just what I did. I'm going to show you something that I was experimenting with that I don't recommend. I showed people in office hours yesterday, but I don't know. It's something I'd never tried before, so I thought I would try. And that is entering chord symbols as text in a big block at the end of a score, like we sometimes do with lyrics. And so I want to show you this and show you how I did it, and then you can decide if you would ever find it useful. I'm not convinced at all that it is, but I'll show you. Christopher, does fingering influence playback at all for strings? I fairly doubt it. I would doubt it, but the only way to find out is to enter it and find out. So here is the score I'm talking about with the chord symbols. So check out what I've done. I've created a text frame here, and in that text frame, I set the font to a sans serif font called Deja Vu Sans Mono. Monospace is the it's not that it sounds serif, it's that it's monospace, like Courier is the classic example. Typewriter style, where each character has the same width. And so now this is just typed in as text. These are all just spaces. So I type F and a whole bunch of spaces and then a vertical bar and then a space. So I typed in my chord progression here, and it lets me copy and paste things around and play with my chord progressions. Is it easier than doing it by adding some blank staves and putting stuff on there? No, it's not easier. It's just something different to try it. I never tried it. And then I have some text that I can, paste into a forum post or whatever if I feel like. So anyhow, I thought that was relatively interesting to do. I don't really recommend it, but for the right purpose, you might find it useful. All right, so Kevin's asking about crescendo over a whole note. Well, that's already possible in 4.1 with a caveat. So let's show you the caveat first. Well, let's do it. Let me create a new score here. And show you how it works. The workaround, so it's going to work. So I'm going to add myself, say, a flute. And the thing you need is to make sure you have a dynamic at the beginning and the end of it. So I'm going to enter a whole note. And I'm going to add a dynamic marking. I'm going to put in pianissimo at the beginning of it. And I'll put in fortissimo at the end of it. select that measure, and press the hairpin shortcut, and let's listen. Right? So this is 4.1. This is already possible. It's been possible for a very long time, since like 3.1. The thing that's the slight drag about it is you do have to put that end dynamic on the next beat. So you have to put it in the next measure. And then if you don't want to see it, you can make it invisible. And so if that next measure was going to be empty and this was supposed to be part of a multi-measure rest, it's a little bit of a drag because now that measure doesn't get included within the multi-measure rest. I just pressed M to enable multi-measure rest. So there's things that are a slight drag about this, and this is definitely planned for improvement. The ability to say, hey, I want to have this crescendo go only 2 beats and then get and then diminuendo. You know, ability to do that is definitely in the plan. It just, you know, as many things, just hasn't happened yet. But it's a high priority for the management, everyone who's involved with the making decisions for MuseScore, to be able to have hairpins that go only part way through the measure and then come down. Some of the groundwork for that is in place for 4.2, but there's still no user interface for it. But the idea of a hairpin that doesn't extend, you know, that ends somewhere in the middle of a measure, that the underpinnings are supported. Let me show you the workaround. So let me show you how I would do this. I'm going to enter in voice 2. I'm going to switch to voice 2 here, and I'm going to enter some quarter rests. And now I have something that I can snap these that crescendo to. So now, and then I can put my fortissimo here, and have to like do a little tweaking of the positioning. Well, let's not worry about positioning. Let's just listen. Oh, I didn't put an ending dynamic on it. So, right? So you can totally do that. Let me just make that guy invisible. Why are these not aligned? I think it's because they are in separate voices is the deal. They are, one of them I added to voice 1 and the other into voice 2. So I should delete this guy and add it to voice 2. And now it aligns better. So anyhow, there's ways of getting this. They're ugly, but it is doable. And yes, it's a high priority to make this better. And so Christopher is saying, could you make 2 tied half notes? Well, yes, absolutely. But you know, does anyone really want to see 2 tied half notes there? It won't look good on paper. It won't translate to Braille well either. It's better to just have the whole note, but then we just have these rests, and I would just make all those rests invisible, and so that the end result of it would be you know, more correct. But also, if you try to export this to Braille, you're going to have these rests to contend with, and that's just the way it is. So Robin's asking how many engineers work on the code. So that's a question without a simple answer. I can tell you that as far as the actual employees of Muse Group, you know, the company that, you know, is sort of in charge of things there, there's maybe half a dozen or so. I don't actually know the current number for sure, but just based on whose names I see attached to pull requests and things, there's roughly half a dozen people, you know, more than 2, less than 10, actively working on it. But in addition, there's the whole community of, you know, it's open source and lots of people fixing bugs, especially, but occasionally implementing new features. So the open source community potentially has hundreds of people contributing. You know, how many people actually contributed to 4.2? Probably less than 20. Probably, you know, there was probably the half dozen or so core members and maybe a dozen more community members who contributed bug fixes or whatever. Yeah, that is the approximate number there. All right, now Marla is asking about switching between sounds on the fly, and that would be nice. And okay, I'm going to try it because, yeah, it's sort of possible. Let's take a look. I'm going to enter. Let's add another instrument to this score. I'm going to add a trumpet, so because I don't know where the the cutoff will be, but I'm going to add myself a trumpet. And now on my trumpet staff, I'm going to, I got D's and E's, and the D plays and the E doesn't. So here's what I'm going to do. So yeah, I'm kind of guessing with those numbers, but yeah, the core team is definitely like less than 10 as far as how many people you actually look at in the log. In fact, let's just take a look, because why the heck not? Let's flip over to a web browser here, and let's take a look at the source to MuseScore on GitHub, and we're just going to look at the commit history. Okay, so if I click on where it says commits, we'll get to see how many people there are. So there's Igor, a whole lot of Igor. This guy is Casper, Yo-Yo, Roman, Mike, Roman, Casper. This guy, I think Calum is, to be honest, I'm not sure if Calum works for the company now or if he's a volunteer. Yo-Yo's definitely a volunteer. Klaus Reddinghaus is a volunteer. He's the one who implemented MEI support. Back to Roman. These are the commits made in the last couple of days, and we're seeing these same names. Oh, James Meisen, he's the guy who did the harp support and is doing some other things. This is Elner here, and he's one of the main people. I'm not even sure who this person is. Conrad Glass, I'm not sure who that is, but his name is in there. But you keep seeing the same names over and over again, right? These are the changes that were made, and we're only at about a half dozen people, including 2 that are volunteers. So yeah, I think you get the idea. All right, so let's come back over here and let me try to get the sound happening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in an instrument change from the text palette right here. Change instrument. And here's the trick. This is a trumpet. If I try to switch to trumpet, MuseScore is going to outsmart me and say, hey, that thing's already trumpet. And it won't let me do anything interesting. Like when I try to play this, hey, didn't play the second note? Oh, I think it's just that. Wow, it isn't playing the second note now. But it still only gives me one mixer channel, because it's like, hey, you didn't change the instrument. However, let me delete that. Actually, if I right click it, I can get back to the place where I select the instrument, and then instead of trumpet, I'm going to pick cornet. I could pick, zither for all it really matters. The point is, it's a different instrument. And because it's a different instrument, when I open the mixer, you'll see that now I have a separate channel for it. So now it's going to switch to MS Basic. And let's hear what I get now. There you go. So, Marla, that's the answer. Yes, you can do it. Now, do you like what you just heard? That's not because I switched to cornet. That's still the trumpet sound, really, that we're hearing here. It's the MS Basic trumpet sound, which is different than the Muse sound. Right? It definitely sounds like 2 different trumpet players. But, if it's just to get you a couple of notes, that's actually not a terrible thing. Like I could totally do that in my MuseScore Café theme if I wanted, just to get that one note. Because it's really just a couple notes that I would need it with. So anyhow, that's how you do it. And then you would switch back to trumpet. Like if you want to get back. Yeah, let's listen to this now. Right, that's the MS Basic. But if I now put in another instrument change here and go back to trumpet, it goes back to the Muse Sounds trumpet. And then, of course, I can take these guys and make them invisible so that they don't actually show up in the score. They just do the thing. So yes, you can do it by switching to a different instrument, and you have to actually pick a different instrument. And it doesn't even matter what it is, because you're going to change the sound anyhow. It just has to be something with the same transposition. Because if I switched from trumpet to flute, it would say, oh, that's a different transposition, and it would insert a key change and do all this other stuff. So as long as it's an instrument with the same transposition, put in an instrument change, and then in the mixer, you'll have a new channel. And then you can keep switching back and forth as often as you want. Now, if I put in another 2 cornet later, it'll reuse that same channel. 2 trumpet will also reuse that same channel. So it won't, unlike MuseScore 3, which would like fill your mixer with extra channels every time you did an instrument change. MuseScore 4 is smarter than that. It will reuse instrument channels, but it does outsmart you a little bit, and that's why you have to actually change instruments, because if you just try to change from trumpet to trumpet, you won't get a new channel. Walter, you didn't ask this here, but you asked it in the community, and this is as good a place to show you the answer, and it's not a good answer. But the question that Walter had asked was, working on the basic music theory course, there's all these worksheets that I have, and the thing is, these worksheets, to be honest, well, there's an interesting story behind them, but they really are mostly designed for you to print and fill out with pencil and paper. It is not really intended that you try to use MuseScore to fill them out. It's possible to use MuseScore to fill them out, but it's just not, it's not easy. And the whole reason, though, that they exist is because I had a blind student in a music theory course I taught at a university, and we didn't have a workbook. You know, we had a workbook, a printed workbook that other students used and she couldn't use. And so we're like, well, we need a new textbook. So I basically created the music theory course, the basic music theory course, in part to substitute for the curriculum of this college course that I was teaching. And just so this one student would be able to access that. I wanted to do this course anyhow, but it gave me direction, right? I was working on the course, developing the course, trying to decide what content it should have and whether I was going to do that or a different course first. The fact that we needed this to work for her said, okay, I guess I'm doing a basic music theory course, and this is going to be the curriculum. I had some input into the curriculum, but it largely follows the curriculum of the original textbook. And it also is why some of the accessibility features that are in MuseScore 4, in MuseScore 3, originally, that's what this was happening in, got there was because we needed things to work for her. And so we figured out what didn't work, and we got stuff working, and now it's working in MuseScore 4 and then some. So in any case, let's open one of these worksheets here. We're going to open, say, other minor scales. I don't know, doesn't matter which. So some, you know, you can, I designed the worksheet so that you would be able to fill them out in MuseScore, but I didn't really expect anyone but Elizabeth to do it, Elizabeth being the student in question. Oh, this is the answers. I don't want the answers. I want the worksheet. Sorry. Let's just pick a different one. Minor keys 1A. Here we go. Oh, 1A is the answers. I did it again. I did it again. A is answers. I don't want answers. But let's look at answers. Minor keys 1. So in the worksheet, most of the worksheets, you could feel like this one is going to be hard. This is, you know, you would just use the palette to add a C sharp minor. But if you turn on the display of invisible elements, you'll see that I have this invisible text here that gives a blind user instructions on how to complete this worksheet in a way that will work for them and for me. So by displaying the invisible elements, you'll see kind of additional instructions on how to complete the worksheet. But your question was about the name. And again, it wasn't relevant at the time because I knew, if I knew who I got that file from, it was Elizabeth. And for everyone else, we just printed it and then they just filled in their names, with pencil and paper. So it's not necessarily meant to be simple for that. But here's how you do it. This is actually part of the header. So I'm going to go to Format, Style, and then Header and Footer. And you'll see here is the header text, show on first page, name, and I'll just delete all those slashes and put in Marc Sabatella, date 12, what is it, the 6th, 7th, 5th, 4th, I had it right the first time, 6th, 23, and boom, there it is. So that's how you do it. Format, style, header. And it'll put it in there because this is part of the header, meaning if this worksheet had been multiple pages, this would automatically show up on all pages. That's part of why it's done as part of the header in that way. So I'm Ian, I see your comment there about invisible notes or rest. Yeah, I missed that before, but obviously that is what I did. So you were just one step ahead of me, I think. Did I miss anything else is the question. Have I missed anything else in here? Kind of don't think so. Has the chat section stopped working? I don't know. I see your chat here. I don't know if there was anything else. Let me look over at my other screen though, just to see if I see other stuff. So as far as I know, chat's still working. As far as I know, it's just not been very active for the last 7 minutes. But as far as I know, things are still working. So it could be that people are responding in threads, and therefore you're not noticing things like, wow, there's 9 replies here to vibrato here. Wow, I hadn't looked at all that. So there's okay. So here's the thing, Dave. It looks like you put in questions in that thread, and therefore I didn't see it. So answer questions in threads, but don't ask questions within threads, or I won't see it unless I open that. So I think that's what happens. So think about that during these live streams. Replying in a thread is a way to reply to that person and not call it to my attention, which is good if you want to let me be focused on the questions that you're asking. But if you're trying to ask questions, don't do it in a thread, do it in the main thing. So Dave, your question about the tremolo marking versus the stems. Yeah, I have a feeling that you are exactly right about that if it's an extended passage, it totally makes sense. The swell on a note, I answered already. Does the replay? Yeah, so that's the deal. When you reply in a thread, what we see here is just that thing there that says 9 replies. Where was it? Like this. So you had replied in a thread to Allison there. So it doesn't show up in the main thing here, which again is great if the whole point is so that I don't get sidetracked by that discussion. So yeah, when you have a question, ask it in the main part. But when you're just replying to someone offline, the threads are a good idea. So that'll just be something to think about as you're asking something. So then yeah, it's possible that during the live streams we won't want to use the threads. The nice thing about the threads for the chat, like the chat within the community, as opposed to during the live stream, is that then you get notified of replies, which is always nice. But yeah, we get to decide how we use these things, and it's going to be up to us to figure out how to do it, and we'll figure it out as we go along. So that said, tomorrow music masterclass. Next week I'm still here. So Robin, if you're saying don't see me now until 2024, next week I'm still here. Next week is I'm still here. It's after that I take off the last couple of weeks. So thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for the replies, threaded or otherwise. And tomorrow for Music Masterclass, we'll kind of be, almost wrapping up the harmony course. The final thing will be next week. Next Thursday will just be me playing everyone's final projects. Everyone who submits a final project, I'll play the music, and we'll just enjoy listening to music. So tomorrow's Music Masterclass will be more answering questions, give people feedback on any work in progress they have, maybe check out some older projects that I, hadn't gotten around to yet. So tomorrow's Music Masterclass will be a little bit of a, wild card as far as that goes. I'll show you a little progress on my project. And we'll do some ear training exercises and so forth. So that's what you have to look forward to tomorrow. And then again, next week, we will kind of wrap up for the year. So thanks everyone again for being here. And I'm obviously stalling while waiting for that repeat to finish repeating. And now I can say to everyone, thanks again. And I will see you tomorrow or next week or in 2024 if you don't make it. Thanks again. Bye.